Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is Richard Pickett. Tonight I'm here with Seneca Williams, and this is Digital Brand Alchemy, and it is a live stream. We will get to hear a lot about Seneca, take your questions. By the way, if you're watching this, you can join us live. The link will be down at the bottom. Actually, I need to update that while Seneca's answering some questions. So I'll go do that. You can't actually join live yet, but you will be able to towards the end of the show. But as you guys know, we have a rapid session at the very beginning where I just fire off a lot of questions. We try to find out as much as possible about Seneca in a very short period of time, so you guys can ask really high quality questions, and then we get a little bit more relaxed and start talking about like whatever comes up. And by the way, we already have a ton of comments, so I'll have to dig through them to see if there are already some questions that have been posted. All right, so welcome, Seneca. Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
And yep. So you go by, do you go by Sen, or is that, do you just shorten the Sen Will as like a nickname, or do you prefer to be called Seneca?
That's a good question. So I'm Seneca Williams. Sometimes people confuse it for Serena Williams, but it's Seneca. And it's hard for some people to pronounce for some reason. I don't know why. So I just say, okay, you can call me Sen.
Okay, fair enough. It's not hard for me to pronounce. At least I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name. All right. So first question up, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and why the people who are watching will want to get to know you.
Okay, great. So as we said, I'm Seneca Williams, but you can also find me on social media as Ask Coach Sen. I empower professional women who are interested in career development and entrepreneurship to beat business anxiety, business burnout, work through anxiety, depression, and all the things that come up in entrepreneurship as they are in startup and the growth phase.
Awesome. What's the most impressive thing your clients say about you? Usually it'll be like behind your back or when they're telling someone else about their experience with you.
You know what? I'm so surprised when I get those answers, like, hear what people say about me behind my back. But what I get from people is I'm very real and I don't hold back. Like, I know sometimes people work with people who hold back, but I want people to be their best at life and their career. So holistic development is something that people will talk about. They'll be like, you know what, she'll help you with everything, right? Even though I specialize in career development and entrepreneurship, I also help people with their personal lives. So that's something. And also I've heard that I have a sense of humor. So that's a good thing as well, and I'm very straightforward. I give people like real world tips. It's like, I talk about inspiration and stuff like that, but I give people real examples, real tips, real things that they can start using now, strategies.
Awesome. Tell me, I'm just checking to make sure our live stream is working, and it looks like it is going well. So tell me, what was the surprisingly easiest thing for you to do in building your brand and your business?
The easiest thing for me to do, which is very strange, was when I finally broke through my own business anxiety, it was showing up as myself. So I realized what I was doing all along in my personal life, it was the reason why I was attracting clients. So I just had to show up on social media that way and show up in public that way. And it was pretty easy just being myself and not trying to compare myself to what other coaches were doing and how they were speaking and how they were presenting themselves.
Okay. And so I read up a little bit about you, obviously, before coming on the show, and you tell a little bit about your story. Moving from New York to Florida with a baby and starting over like with nothing, just a couple of suitcases. I wanted to preface this question with that. What have you found to be the most difficult thing in business? And I know like that whole area of your life or that whole time period of your life may have been very difficult, but that part aside, because I do want to talk about it later, that part aside, what has been the most difficult thing? Like no matter what you try, it just seems like you just can't get that one thing in your business to work.
If I'm going to be really honest with you, it wasn't about the business. It was about myself.
Okay.
I would know what to do sometimes, and I would know how to do it, but my mind, right? The fear of actually doing it and actually stepping out and saying this is going to be real and I'm actually going to pursue a full-time business. That fear used to stop me from moving forward, and it used to stop me from growing. Once I broke through that barrier, that was fear, the fear of failure, the fear of success, the imposter syndrome, and all of that, it started to become easier. It's almost like I didn't even have to go out and seek clients. They were actually starting to come to me. And it was just from just switching my mindset.
Awesome. By the way, I think your hair may be hitting your mic a little bit.
Oh, thank you for telling me. Sorry.
Yep, no worries.
Okay.
So getting past the fear was your hardest. What's the biggest problem that you solve for others?
I think it's the same thing. I think for most people, they think some of the myths that come up for people are, if I start a business, then it means I should have a business mindset. Like I should have been born with a business mindset. Or they think to themselves, I should have a lot of money to do this, or I should already know how to do these things. And those are not realities. You don't have to know how to do everything in business. You don't have to be born with a business mindset. You can hire someone like you, right, to teach them. You can hire someone to teach you how to do the things you don't know how to do. So I think for most people, that's what I've encountered. And that's what I help people with, is working through the barrier of, it's really something that you have to control in your mind, that I can do this. I just need to hire the support for the things I don't know how to do, or hire someone to teach me.
Cool. Who are people that are outside your business who would be excited to come on the show and be interviewed?
Outside of my business that would be excited to be interviewed by you?
Yeah. So, I mean, like not an employee or whatever. It could be an associate, but just not directly inside your personal business.
I think anyone that's interested in being an influencer, a thought leader, someone like that would be interested in coming and sharing their thoughts. Because if you think about where we're going in the future, people are going to be paid more for ideas and experiences.
Okay. And last question. So what's one obscure fact about you that most people just don't know? I think I asked this one on the Christmas one that we did. So you can't reuse that one. You have to have something different.
Okay, so I have, for some reason, a strange desire to want to learn to fly an airplane.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't want to jump out of an airplane. Like, I don't want to go skydiving, but I would like to learn how to fly one.
So is it like the freedom aspect that you would be looking forward to?
Maybe it's freedom, being in control of something like that, like being able to say I can fly an airplane. Like, wow, that's something big.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard that one before. I used to have an interest to fly a plane. I guess I just never had the time, because it's a pretty big time commitment.
It is.
So is that something you're going to actively pursue? Like,
I do plan to actively pursue that. Let me know if everything is still good with sound.
Yep.
I do plan to actively pursue that. I don't know when. Maybe when things settle down for me in life. Right now, I have a teenager. She's 13, so she keeps me pretty busy. So I picture that later on, when she's like, grown and moved on or whatever, just taking time to take flight lessons.
Awesome. Have you picked out a place there in Florida where you could do that?
It's so funny that you say that. I actually live maybe like 5 minutes away from one of those airports that they do flight lessons.
Oh,
so
cool.
I see the planes all the time. Like, they fly right over my house.
Awesome. So for those that are watching, the link is up to date. So if you want to come and join us, you certainly can. Just go to rpurls.com/live-guest and turn on your webcam, obviously. And you can join us. And I'm going to like, is there anything that you want to talk about first? And while you're saying that, I'm going to see if I can scan through all the comments that we received before the show to find out what people are thinking or asking.
Okay, awesome. So something that's really interesting, when people look at my LinkedIn profile, they're usually a little bit confused. They don't know what I actually do. And I don't like labels and I don't like to fit in a box. And the reason why is because by profession, I'm a licensed therapist. So as a licensed therapist, I'm licensed to diagnose mental health disorders and treat them. And for many people, they feel like if I do that, they don't understand how it is that I also can do coaching and I can also do public speaking and guest blogging and stuff like that. So I don't like to be put in a box. So the label of, well, what are you? Are you a therapist? Are you a business coach? Are you whatever? I actually just try to focus on what it is I help people with. So as a therapist, I help people online in my online practice with anxiety, depression, life transitions, like relocating, going through a divorce, relationship issues that might be affecting their career. Sometimes it's a lot of career stuff as well, like dealing with your coworkers or your boss or your people you're supervising, your employees. I work with a lot of managers. Most of my clients are professionals. So I work with nurses and doctors and attorneys, accountants, principals, police department, all these different professions. So that's one thing that I do as well, in addition to also being a coach for entrepreneurs. Now, we do talk about the stuff that goes on in the business as far as business startup, like, okay, well, what do I do first? How do I register my business? And then how do I, start creating a platform for myself? Like, I got to get on social media. I got to do all of these things. So those things, you can Google it, right? As you know, you can Google these things, but there's nothing like having the support of someone to have that accountability. So I help people with that part. I also help them with the emotional stuff that comes up. Because I'll tell you this, I've worked with clients who said that they registered their business 6 months ago, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, and nothing happened. It was almost like they bought a new car and they thought the car was just going to drive itself.
Right.
And it's just in their garage.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
I see that a lot, especially with influencers. I'm bigger on LinkedIn, but I see it a lot. They just think I'm just going to post a lot of content and I'll get a lot of clients. It's funny when I go and talk to coaches, especially in the background, offline or whatever, they admit that they don't have any clients. But if you looked at all the activity they have, you would think, well, surely they've made it. And I think because no one exposes that, all the coaches coming in think, oh, that's all I have to do, because the person that has like 100,000 followers or whatever and a lot of engagement, they look like they should have clients. So someone who just has 2,000 connections think I can just do this and I'll grow a business, and they get sucked into trying to grow to 100,000 connections, and they don't have any clients either. Yeah. And it takes them like 2 to 3 years before they finally get burned out and realize that it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're talking about, that's what I help people with. Like, I help them with that part of it. Like, okay, you got the car, but now you have to figure out what you're going to do to drive the car. And sometimes it's a matter of they don't understand how it works, like that business mindset. They don't get it. They think it's just putting up a social media account and a website. And I'm not going to lie, that was me the first year. I just was like, okay, well, I just have to get a website, and I got some social media. So where are the clients? Where are they? Right? But as you know, there requires a lot of networking and relationship building, engaging with people. You're actually going to have to get on the phone with potential clients and follow up and all this stuff. And then when it gets to that point, they're like, oh my gosh, like, I'm afraid to do that. It's almost like there's a fourth wall with social media, like this barrier. And right. Then when they realize they actually have to reach out, and talk to people and kind of do a little bit of work, it's like, oh, I can't do that.
So I've noticed that one, that like that's the first hurdle they overcome. The first hurdle is just taking action and building the website and beginning to make content, and you have to figure all that out. Okay. Then I think the next hurdle that I've observed is going from that, like I'm just going to keep throwing content out there, to the networking aspect, whether it's going to local places, or messaging people directly and setting up phone calls, etc. So then once they start getting that flow, the next thing that I see is they don't know how to close or set, or because it feels too salesy, and they've been told, don't ever sell, because you can't ever sell. If you sell, it's so bad. And that's the next hurdle, is like learning how to have those conversations to get to a point where it's like, can we work together? Does this sound good to you? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely correct. You're right. That is a major thing. And for some people, it's very emotional. And then I have to take them back, right? Like I have to take them back into their mind about what they were conditioned to believe about sales and salesmen. And many times you'll find them going back into their childhood even and saying, well, salesmen, I always thought they were sleazy, or I was taught to not trust them. Right? Because we remember back in the day, people selling encyclopedia, and someone came to the house and they would be selling like the vacuum cleaner or something like that. And then your parents would be like complaining about them after that person left, like, oh, they're trying to get my money, So that stuff is ingrained in you. It becomes you download that. Even though you don't realize it in your consciousness, in your subconscious, you're like, sales are bad. Salespeople are bad. I don't like people selling to me. It's bad. So now you have a business and you're trying to close a deal, and all that stuff is coming up for you, right? It's being triggered. It's coming up for you. So this is what I realized, using myself for an example. I actually, before I was a therapist.
The mic keeps.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, where is your mic on your? I'm trying to see where it is on your cord.
Okay, so it's a little bit low down, so I moved it. Is that better?
Yeah. All right. That's why I thought it was hitting on your hair, because I thought it was on the cord. I guess.
Okay. Is it good now?
Oh yeah, it's perfect now.
Okay, great. So when I started off as a therapist, that wasn't the first time that I was in sales or transactions. I actually, probably around the age of 19, I got into MLMs. So you're familiar with MLMs, right?
Oh yeah.
The business in a box.
Yeah.
So that was the first time that I actually experienced any kind of sales. And all of these emotions crept up and I would freeze. I didn't even want to hand out my card or tell anyone that I was selling anything. It was that bad. Like I was totally frozen. And I would only really tell my friends and family or people close to me about it, not strangers, right? So that leads me into another topic we could talk about later, the friends and family. So when it comes to sales and I became a therapist, I realized I wasn't selling anything. What I was doing is people were coming to me, right? And at one point I used to do therapy in person. People were coming to me for support. All I'm doing is finding out how they need support, sharing with them how I can support them, and asking them if they would like to work with me. I'm not giving them something they don't want. I'm not forcing anything down their throat, right? I have no gun to their head. I'm just saying, what do you need help with? This is how I can help you. Would you like to work together? It's so easy when you put it that way. And then it's, okay, well, this is how much it costs, and how would you like to make payment?
Exactly. Man, you touched on something else there. I may want to rewind and ask.
Of course.
So yeah, actually, let's rewind to the back to the beginning of the process. If you could go back and tell your first self that's in that first year that thought, I'm just going to set up a website and wait, and some content. What would you tell yourself the one thing that made the most difference? Like now that you can look back and you began to do the networking and connecting with people and getting them on the phone, like what's the one thing that you would say that's the one thing I need to do? Like it could be I got involved with this particular local networking group and that's where I got my first start, or like what's that one thing that seemed to kick start it off for you?
The one thing that kicked it off was investing money into getting coached.
Okay. And then, so what's the first thing
That's
that the coach
one
told
thing.
you? What?
The first thing, like the coaches that I work with, the first thing they were talking about was mindset. You know, they were like, what's going on with your mindset? Why aren't you showing up on social media? Why aren't you presenting yourself to people when you go out and talk? So we talked a lot about mindset. But before that, I was just Googling information and going to free webinars and free workshops, which are great, not knocking it. I actually saw that you're a part of SCORE. I used to go to SCORE and all of that, but it wasn't until I hired someone and got that individualized support with eyes on my business telling me, okay, Seneca, I think you might need to tweak this. You might need to change that. If this is what you want to produce, then this is how you do it. This is how you speak about it. So it wasn't until I invested money. Before that, I was just like in the wind blowing.
Yeah, SCORE, by the way, it's a good experience for me because I learned some things to not do. And it was a difficult time for me as well. As a matter of fact, one of my clients, and this kind of illustrates the point, one of my clients from SCORE contacted me just in the last 2 weeks and said, hey, remember the website that I was working on? You know, I have this one roadblock. I went back to SCORE and some of their social media people told me that I should probably give up on it. What do you think? And I said, I said, well, I told you in the beginning, here are the difficulties you would run into and why, like, these are the problems you're gonna have to solve with that. And you're not solving them. So maybe you should consider it. But I remember like in whatever it was, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when I was actually talking to this guy about his website idea and all that, that because I was unpaid, I couldn't like really get in his grill, so to speak, or like step into, you know, his business and say, this is dumb, or like, I would never do that. I couldn't be, I felt like I couldn't be totally honest. And that was really difficult for me as a coach or as a business mentor to say, this isn't going to work. I wouldn't invest your time in that. And now, like, if I'm going to be paid as a coach and you're come to me, it's like, Richard, can you help me with my business? I would say, I'm not going to take that on as a project because here's why I don't think that's going to work unless you make these changes. And if you're ready to make those changes, which in this case, it would be a totally different business for him. It's like, because the website idea that he had wasn't going, it wasn't going to work. But I couldn't tell him that until this 2-week period when I could actually be honest and say, well, I tried telling you that, but I was in a bad position where I couldn't really be honest. So that's the one bad takeaway I had from SCORE. So I'm sure like when you had these SCORE coaches, you also got limited advice.
Yeah.
The other one is when I've gotten free advice, it's like, okay, that's free advice. Maybe I'll take it, maybe I won't. But when I've paid a coach, you know, and you put $5,000 in as an example, and you're going to be coached for 2 months or 6 months or like whatever that term is, every time my mindset is, okay, in this period of time, I'm going to get 10 times that money back. So I'm going to do everything that God tells me to do. And then that's when change happens.
Yeah.
What's your experience
There's a
with it?
psychology to it. Like if you think about it, what you said, value, right? So it's like if you got a free t-shirt versus if you went into Nordstrom, right? And you bought a Chanel t-shirt, you'd probably treat them differently.
Oh yeah.
Right? You'd probably take the free t-shirt and just kick it around, right? But the Chanel t-shirt, you take it and put it in your closet, you know, and you take care of it for years, right? You'd value it. So when it comes to free help and free support, and this is what I tell potential clients, and they probably think I'm selling to them. And I'm like, okay, whether or not you work with me or not, you're going to have to eventually pay someone, right? Because what happens is when you get that free support, the person giving you the information, right? They're not bringing it 100%. Right? They're not giving you all that information that you need. They're not diving in and looking at your business. They're not putting all their eyes on it because they're not as invested in it. So they're giving you a lower quality of support. For you, because you know it's free, it's that free t-shirt,
Yep.
You don't take the time to really do the work. You think, oh, it's free, or even if it's cheap, like, these cheap programs, you'll be like, oh, I only invested like $50 in it. It's whatever, it's pizza money. So I'll get around to it. But if you were, like you said, to invest $5,000 into it, I bet you every day you're going to show up. When you're on that call, you're going to pay attention. You're going to show up to your calls on time. You're going to take notes, right? You're going to make sure you get the most out of it, because you, like you said, you want to double and triple your investment into that program. So if it was a $5,000 program, you're now looking to make $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 because of that.
Yep. In my case, it was 10. I wanted to make 10 times as much. As a matter of fact, so I'm a big little sticky note kind of guy. I'll jot something down I need to do, or like if it's the beginning of the day and I think, okay, these 2 things I have to get done today, I'll take a note. I'll write each one on their own little sticky, and I'll stick them right on my desk. Right now my desk is clean, so I don't have anything that I need to do, but I do want to peel this one off. This is on my monitor, and this question just says, what does this have to do with 50K6? Which this means $50,000 in 6 months. That was my goal. And it was from the coach that I paid, because I paid him $5,000. And so we made a plan, and I noticed that I began to deviate from the plan, or I think I need to do this other thing first today. And so I began to ask myself that question all the time. Okay, so what does this actually have to do with 50K6? And if the answer to that is nothing, then it's like, okay, I'm not going to do that one. And it really did help me refine down. Another one I have, Gary Keller. I just picked this one up. Gary Keller from Keller Williams has this question. You may not be able to read it well enough because it's so I write small. What's the one thing that I can do today, or in this relationship, or with this project, or whatever, so that everything else becomes either easier or irrelevant? I think that's a really powerful focusing question. I really love that question from Gary Keller. Okay, enough about my little method of stickies.
I think that's a great method. I actually do post-it notes as well. I also do a lot of journaling. I keep a journal for different things. So I love what you just said about what does this have to do with it. For 2020, I always name my year. I always label it with one word. For 2020, my word is alignment. So what I realized, people would ask me to be part of something, come speak at this event, come do this thing, be part of my podcast, be part of this program, do something like that. And it's flattering, right? When you're a new entrepreneur, you're so flattered because you're getting people noticing you and asking you to be part of things. And then I started saying, you know what, if it's not in alignment with what it is that I'm doing and I want to do, then I have to decline. I have to say no. So my word for 2020 is alignment. So it's kind of like what you said. Is this aligned with where I want to go with what I'm doing? If it's not, then it's a no.
Yep. That reminds me too of one of the other steps that people end up needing to take when in growing their business. So we talked about several of them already. One is not just make a website and content. You actually have to get in touch with people and start building a network and have conversations. Then you're learning to sell. You have to get past that I'm afraid to ask people for money aspect, and have a smooth pitch, so to speak, how to do that comfortably. Another one is talking to the wrong people. And it's kind of like your alignment that you just mentioned. I think that's another one that coaches have to learn early on, or personal brands have to learn early on, that not only do they accept all the, I'm going to go be on that podcast, I'm going to go do all these different varied things, but they also then they put their calendar up, and everybody they meet, they send them this little Calendly link. It's like, hey, let's have 5 minutes or 15 minutes of virtual coffee, or whatever. And they end up spending their time talking to all these people who are never going to be their client ever. What method do you use? I have a term I call ideal client, and I have 2 ways to measure it. What do you use to determine if someone's going to be your ideal client or not?
Well, usually I find out from them what it is that they're doing right now. Like, what are you currently doing? What are you interested in doing? I actually do use Calendly to set appointments as well. And I have some questions in there so I could find out what's going on with them. Because what I find is, and you can tell me if you experience this, people like to feel important, so they might see that you're on social media and they think for some reason you're important or you're popular, and they want to talk to you, they want to have your time, they want to message you and get on a call with you, but there's no plan. So usually I ask them what that is before we even like get to that point of scheduling time. I'll say, okay, sure. If you'd like to get on a call, are you looking to work with me professionally? Are you looking for some help? Like, what is it that I can help you with? And then we'll then from there go on to a call. But it requires you to kind of set up your own way to screen people. You have to. Otherwise, like you said, you'll end up like having coffee with everybody and
Yep.
people picking your brain and all this stuff. In the beginning, you don't know this. If you, especially if you don't have a coach or someone, like you telling them like, that's not what you want to do. But in the beginning, it's very flattering. Someone's like, oh, let me take you out for coffee. So I have been victim to this,
Yep.
and it's like, they take me out for coffee. And I'm like, I mean, I like coffee, but I have coffee at home. I could, right? Like, I don't need to go out for coffee. And then next thing you know, they're taking notes. Like, we're talking and they're taking notes. I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? So it's having experiences like that in the beginning that made me realize, okay, now I have to screen people and figure out what is it that you need support with. And then if they're like, oh, well, you know what, I have this problem, great, let's get on a consultation and I'll tell you what services I have for that problem.
Yeah, I have. I've experienced that a couple times early on. Another problem that I've noticed is a lot of coaches, especially, are givers. I'm totally the giver, and the giver.
Yes.
Who wrote that book? Adam Grant, I think, wrote Give and Take. I think the name of it is. So you have givers, you have takers, and then you have quid pro quo, or people that like, I'll give you as much as you give me back. And I think most coaches are typically givers, and so we sit down with someone and I would build out their whole plan, and I would think I'm showing them how valuable I am, so that then they'll hire me to coach them to walk through this plan. And I remember two specific different times, two different people, they took notes. One of them even recorded on their phone. Like they started recording. I was kind of flattered.
Wow.
And then later, like, they came back around with more questions. And I realized, yeah, they're never going to be a client there. And I said, hey, you'll have to, like, I'm happy to work with you, but to do this plan, you're going to have to pay. And then they never came back around again. And I realized I had to make a serious change with how I was presenting myself.
Do you do free consultations?
No, I do a discovery. So one book that really helped a lot with that is Keenan Gap Selling. I love this guy. He's on LinkedIn. He does a Keenan Gap Selling challenge or whatever, and he does it with live video. But basically, he talks about having where people are and where they want to go need to be as far apart as possible. And when you ask questions, you find out. And if they're really close, legitimately, truly close, no one will pay money to just take one step. So then you just say, I don't think you actually need my help. Let's go ahead and hop off the phone. But if through your discovery you realize they're really, really, really far apart, and they believe that you're the person that can make that gap recovery, then they will hire. If they think they can work with you and they can afford you and they want to make that change, those are the three factors of like closing the deal. So I believe a lot in discovery of understanding where they are, the frustrations, difficulties they've had, and where they want to go, and what does that actually look like, and what have they tried, et cetera, to see if there's actually a gap there.
Yeah, definitely.
How about you?
So in the past, the discoveries call, which is the AKA sometimes the pick your brain session, because sometimes what people want to know is how much information I can get from you. But during that time, you're also figuring out what they need. and where they are and how far they are away from it, you know? So in the beginning, like stages, people would say, oh, can I pick your brain? And I didn't realize that's what it was. It was actually a discovery call or a pick your brain session, where they're actually trying to see how much the information that they can get from you, but also in turn, it's you getting how much information you can get from them with where they are in their journey, like you said. So, you know, the important thing that you mentioned is for coaches, even though we are givers, right? And we experience sometimes guilt. There's a sense of guilt sometimes in the beginning of, well, I mean, should I really be charging for this? Or is this really worth this much money? If you think about what a coach does, they help someone improve a situation exponentially. So it's paying for itself over and over and over and over and over again, right? So if you're helping someone to make more money and they will keep making more money, then yes, it is valuable and you should be charging for it, right? So it's like changing your mindset about what it is. Because I mean, I guess because sometimes coaches do it so effortlessly, it seems so easy. Like, well, like you said, I just wrote up a whole plan for this person.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
And it's like, that was easy. But you wrote up a plan that they could probably use for another 5 years to make how many hundreds of thousands of dollars?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And what really burned me with that, and like, it's kind of like touching the stove. I burned my hand. It's like, okay, I'm never doing that again. Is when they called back and wanted to meet again for more information. And I had to realize, yeah, no, that's not how this is going to work. Like, now I get it. And that, I don't want to, I don't know. I don't want to slight, they're a religious of sorts, but I don't want to like say which one and like come off like I'm trying to slight anyone who's religious. But my presumption was, because of their background and the context of them as an individual, is that they would be upfront, honest, and not try to take advantage of me. And I think that they probably think that they didn't take advantage of me as well. Like, they can't really see where the wrong in that was. And that's why, as a coach, you have to be more vigilant, because people won't really think that they're stealing from you. And I'm air quoting that because it's not quite that extreme. Because if you're giving it away, it's kind of hard to steal something you give away. But you can both fall into a trap without realizing that's actually what you're doing. And that woke me up totally.
Absolutely.
Another one that you touched on just there is because we do it so effortlessly. And I think this is the thing. There's a curse of knowledge, and it has multiple effects that are negative. One of those negative effects of having the curse of knowledge is, from my perspective, this is so easy, and I'm cursed with the knowledge of how to do this thing so easy. I think I shouldn't be paid for that. And it becomes natural just to give that away. So that's one of the negative aspects of having too much familiar knowledge in your field.
I totally get it. And I'm happy that I became a therapist first before getting into coaching, because it helped me to understand that, wait, you went to school for this for how many years? You had to train for this, clinical internships, and train for this. You had to take an exam that you had to pass, a national exam. You had to pass the state board and get licensed by your state. Each state that I practice in, I have to get licensed. So when I realized that I had to spend money to gain this knowledge and the ability to provide this service, yes, it costs money. And then I have to maintain it, right? I don't just become a therapist and that's it. Like, every couple of years, you have to go back and like update your license. You have to pay for that. So it is valuable. When you realize what you do helps someone's life improve, and you understand, like I said, exponential growth, they will keep growing. After you've helped that person one time, they can take that and keep growing. It's like teaching someone how to fish, right? They'll keep eating. So if you're teaching people how to fish and they keep eating and you're thinking, oh, I just taught them how to fish, it's not a big deal. Now they can eat. Or as a matter of fact, not only can they eat, they can catch fish and sell it.
Right.
Right? So, so just think of it like that. You mentioned something a little bit earlier about people don't realize that is what they're doing. They don't realize they're stealing information. And remember what I said before, the future is going into information and experiences.
Yes.
Because it's not a tangible thing, it's not a product. We're not selling, shoes. We're not selling jewelry or something like that. It's not a thing that you can touch. It's not a tangible thing. People kind of don't see it as valuable. But it is very valuable. Ideas, information, knowledge, and experiences. It's very valuable because it rewires the way you think and what you do and how you produce and all of these things. So it is very valuable. Actually, it's more valuable sometimes than a product because it lasts longer. As long as you have your mind and your memory, you're going to remember that stuff, right? And once you change, you're changed forever. So we have to look at it as, wow, information costs money. Information has value. And when we look at it as an exchange, right? Really what it is, it's an exchange. They are exchanging currency for the value that you're giving them. So it's not like this thing when you go in the supermarket and like you take a grape and you taste it, right? Because I think that's what people think. Oh, well, I just took a grape. But you wouldn't stand in the supermarket and eat the whole bag of grapes.
Right.
That would be stealing.
Right.
So it's like, okay, you had a grape. Now you have to buy the bag of grapes.
Right. Excuse me. Yeah, that's really a good point about the difference between sample and the whole bag. And that, I think that's the thing that I was missing when I would help someone make a complete plan. The other thing, that the trap that I fell into with SCORE, going into it, you already know when you meet with this client, they're not going to pay you anything. Like you're volunteering your time. And that became a pattern for me to put everything out on the table. So then even after when I left SCORE, it,
Oh, I lost sound. I don't hear you. Not sure what happened to the audio. Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, you hear me? Okay. Not sure. Yeah, I don't hear you. And you see me and you hear me. Okay. I didn't press anything at all. I didn't touch anything. Okay, it looks like it froze. All right, so I don't know if the streaming, you can still hear me, but something that's very important to know is that you are a person of value, whatever it is you offer. So you have to deal with whatever guilt and feelings that maybe you are taking advantage of people, you're charging too much. You have to deal with that. Something that I can suggest to people when they feel this way is thinking about identifying if they have a fear of either making money, like what their money mindset is, or making a lot of money, what they think about people who charge a lot and make a lot of money. So there's a great book called The Big Leap. I think it's Gay Hendricks. You might have been familiar with that. And in that book, there's something called the upper limit problem. So the upper limit problem is really thinking about, what is it that I am afraid of when it comes to making more money? I know for some people in their business, they hit like a plateau. So maybe they only charge a certain amount of money for one consultation. It could be $100. And they find they kind of plateau at $100. Even after 5 years or 10 years, they still are on that plateau, right? And it's because they're probably afraid to raise their prices, which they should, because if they've been doing what they're doing for 5 years, 10 years, at this point, you have more information, more expertise, right? And you can probably find that your niche in the market, you have a good hold on that. So you're the go-to person now for that particular information. So definitely you should be charging more money. But if in your mind you feel guilt or anything like that for charging more, then you're probably not likely going to do so. So when it comes to the entrepreneur's mindset, what I do notice for many people is they experience a business anxiety. So while we're waiting for Richard to come back on, definitely want to talk to you about what things you need to be looking for to see if you have business anxiety and if this is what's causing you not to show up the way that you need to in your business. Okay, so I'm actually just going to pull it up here because business anxiety can take place in different ways. It can be emotional, it can be physical, or it can be behavioral. And the thing about it is, it's so subtle because it's not an anxiety that may come up for you in your regular day-to-day life, or it may not come up for you at your job, but it comes up in your business because now you're being pulled outside of your comfort zone. So when you're pulled outside of your comfort zone, for example, talking to new clients, you're being pulled out of your comfort zone, and you might not know, okay, what's the right thing to say? How should I say it? What are they going to think about me? All of these thoughts come up in your head, like negative self-talk. And it's important that you don't let the negative self-talk get to you, because if it does get to you, okay, hi, Richard.
Yeah.
Hello.
My Chrome, can you hear me?
Yes.
But my Chrome, I don't know why Chrome locks up in the audio processor. Is the first thing to go, and then I just have to like kill everything and come back in.
Welcome back. I was talking about identifying signs of business anxiety because as we were talking about, when you're in those situations, right? Sometimes there's an anxiety about, okay, I should be charging for this, but should I say it now? How am I going to sound if I say that? What should I do? I don't know. And then you kind of feel anxious about it. You feel a little weird about it. So I was actually saying some of these things that are coming up are business anxiety that we have to learn to identify and work through. Because it doesn't come up maybe at your job because that's a comfort zone. And you're used to your job and you're going to get your paycheck, whatever you do, right? Some jobs will pay you whether you do work or not. But when it comes to your own business, you're responsible for getting paid now. You're responsible for everything. Now these feelings are triggered. So I was saying there are 3 different ways to identify if it is business anxiety, which can be emotional signs, physical signs, or behavioral signs. So I'm just going to go through those.
Yep. Sounds good.
Right. So I actually have it here so I can read it out so I don't miss anything, right? So like some emotional signs that people will go through, right? If there's business anxiety, is a persistent worry or fear about making mistakes. So they're constantly worried, is this the right thing to do? I'm not sure how to do it. So it actually keeps them kind of stuck and frozen if they should even move forward, because they have those thoughts ruminating, and is this the right thing to say, and how should I say it? Something else that they experience is they may feel embarrassed to promote themselves or their business. So it's a very emotional thing. And these things that I'm listing here are things that my actual clients have said to me, or women have said to me, like if I went to a conference or a networking event. These are actual things that they tell me. Difficulty staying focused and not having clarity. So they kind of feel like a brain fog. They feel like I can't think straight, I can't focus, I'm easily distracted. I don't know what's going on. They may feel a lot of confusion or frustration about running the business. So when people say, how's business going? They instantly feel frustrated inside because they know it's not going the way that they hoped it would go. And, they're constantly feeling irritated by the very thing that they want to do. So those are emotional signs.
Okay. And then you said physical?
Yeah. So the physical signs, right? The physical signs really get to people when I tell them, because they're like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't even think about like that it could affect me physically, right? Emotional things affect us physically as well. So the physical signs are like having frequent tense muscles. Sometimes they're fine, and then now they have to do something in their business, and all of a sudden they get tension in their body. So they find that they have tense muscles. Maybe their neck is tight or their back or something like that. They feel tense. They may have a tight chest or heart palpitations. So they might actually have to make a phone call to a potential client, or someone is contacting them to come and do public speaking or something like that, and they find that their heart is beating really fast or their chest is getting really tight. This is them getting anxious, but they're not realizing that's what's going on. Sometimes they get extremely fatigued, like just thinking about working on the business, or as they're doing something in their business, they feel like, oh, I'm so tired. I need to sleep. I'm exhausted. I'll just work on this tomorrow because I'm just, I need a nap. They may also feel wired, constantly going, feeling wired, feeling like they can't sleep. That's also something that people don't realize. This is anxiety. And then sometimes they may have headaches, right? So it's time to work on stuff for your business. It's like, oh, I have a headache, and it's a headache that's not associated with any other illness. It's not associated with mental health. It's not associated with like a physical illness or anything like that. They can't identify where this headache is coming from. So those are the physical signs. Now the behavioral signs shows up from what they are doing or not doing. And some of those are avoiding important tasks, planning, and setting deadlines. So the very things that they need to be doing in their business, they are always finding ways to avoid it. They're always making excuses, and they're not being accountable to the things that they say they want to do. So they might say, oh, well, you know what? I wanted to work on my business for 2 hours today, but now I only have 30 minutes, so I can't today. I'll just do it tomorrow. Or, it's raining outside, so I'm not going to meet that person again that I was going to meet. Or, my leg hurts, so I'm not going to attend that conference or whatever it is. They find all these different excuses. Some of them I've heard tell me, oh, well, I wasn't ready yet. Whatever it is that comes up in their mind that tells them I can't do this thing. Procrastination. Big one, procrastination and getting easily distracted. So they might just be thinking, oh, well, I'm just procrastinating. But really what it is when you feel anxious sometimes about doing something, you actually don't take action on it, and you find yourself being busy with other things. So I work a lot with women, primarily with women. And I find that they'll be like, oh yeah, I'll get around to it next week. Or they find themselves, oh yeah, I'm working on my business card. I got like this third design. What do you think? Or I did my logo again for the 5th time. What do you think of this? And it's like, that's not income producing activity. So what is it why are you procrastinating? Why aren't you actually like calling back those clients? Or, why aren't you going to the events and speaking to people? What's going on? They have difficulty communicating to others about their business. So that could be potential clients or their colleagues, other business owners. So basically, when I speak with people, I kind of go through this as an assessment to find out, do you have business anxiety? And just the FYI, business anxiety is not an actual medical diagnosis or a mental health disorder. These are just, different traits that come up. And I see them in clusters of women who are in business. So I call it business anxiety, because they're experiencing the symptoms of anxiety, but it's only related to business. It's like they don't experience it at work, or they don't experience it in their regular life.
Awesome. When I was jotting down this list, the clients that I've worked with, I was trying to think what's the most common. So I've had some symptoms myself. I'll tell you one of them, but I wanted to go over. I haven't found it to be very common. The one that have found the most common is the avoidance and procrastination, which is another form of avoidance. What is your approach? Or first, would you say that's probably one of the most common ones that you've had?
Yes, that is the most common.
Yeah. So what's your approach on it? Yeah. Well, so what do you tell your clients? Like, have you ever got to the point where you've worked with a client maybe for a month, maybe longer, but over a specific, like 1 month period of time, every time you talk to them, you always agreed they're going to go do this thing. And every time you talk to them the next time, they haven't done it. You work through it again. They're going to go do it. The next time you talk to them, they still haven't done it. Have you ever got to that point, like, I'm going to fire this guy?
That might have only happened once.
Okay, so what do you do to motivate them so that that doesn't happen? How do you change that for them?
Carefrontation.
Okay.
I don't call it confrontation. I call it carefrontation. I'll say, so, Richard, I noticed that the last time that we spoke, you said that you were going to update your LinkedIn profile. And that was 2 weeks ago. So I noticed you haven't updated your LinkedIn profile. What's been going on? What do you think is stopping you from doing that? Is it that you didn't understand, the plan that we had? You don't know how to do it? Tell me what's going on. What has gotten in your way of doing that?
And then do you?
And usually,
yeah, go
right?
ahead.
Yeah, usually they'll be like, well, you got me. You told me how to do it. We worked through how to do it, right? So then you got them stuck right there, right?
Yeah, the other one, which again, I think it's a form of procrastination or avoidance is well, I planned on 2 hours, but then this emergency came up and only had 30 minutes. And since I only had 30 minutes, I just decided I was going to watch TV or get on YouTube or like whatever, just waste my time. But I have found the one thing that they want to do that they use as the avoidance, like, oh, but I worked on this other thing. Like they'll do that until 3 a.m. But the one thing that they want to avoid, like all the planets have to be in alignment for them to actually execute on that one. But the thing that wastes their time, like they'll lose sleep over that. Yeah.
It's a false sense of being in action mode.
Yes.
They think they're in action, right? Like I said, the lady that is making the business card or the logo for the 5th time. It gives them a false sense of productivity. So it's like, well, I'm busy, I'm doing stuff, but you're not doing stuff that's going to produce income. So then when I bring them back to, but this is not going to produce income. If you do your card 5 times and it doesn't even matter, like you just need your name and your number and your website on the card. Right. And honestly, like I've been getting along fine with just connecting to people directly through my phone. So I let them know, like, let's talk. What are you afraid of? What's scaring you right now? What's going on for you emotionally? So that's why I don't get to that point of I've asked them to do it 3, 4, 5 times and they're not doing it, because we get to the source. Why aren't you doing it? But before we get to the why aren't you doing it, I got to ask people, why do you even want to? First, why do you want to do this, right? So sometimes people will be like, oh, I want to change careers, or I want to start a business. Why? Why do you want to start a business? Now, if they're like, oh, well, I hate my job and I just need to quit it and I need to do something else. That's not going to motivate them. That's not an internal motivation. That's an external motivation. So you're looking for intrinsic motivation. You're looking for people who are committed to something internally, like I have to do this because this is my passion and this is my purpose, or, this is how I want to pay for my lifestyle now. But if it's someone who's like, they have a 9-to-5 job and they're just like, oh, well, I just want to make some extra money, it's just definitely not going to work. So that's another part of it too. They're not going to take it as seriously. But when you corner people and you corner them to, well, you said your why was you wanted to replace your job, you wanted to replace your income. and now you're not doing the things that will replace your income, what are you afraid of? And usually when I get to that, they're like, "Oh, I'm afraid because if I fail, or if this happens, it's not going to work out." Like, all the truth start coming out. And then what I notice with people with anxiety is you have to break things down in really small micro tasks. They create these big, huge to-do lists. And what we do is we break them down into bitty pieces. It's like a puzzle. You cannot solve the whole puzzle, but take sections and put them together. And then you have the whole puzzle solved over time. So you have 30 minutes. Great. What part of the puzzle can we solve in 30 minutes?
Right. Yeah, I heard you speak that fear one just a minute ago, and I think that's a very common one when people will say, if I put myself out there and this doesn't work, I'm a failure. So then they, engage with avoidance or whatever to not have to go do that one thing. And I think that's probably one of the biggest ones for avoidance. And I like your method. You talked about breaking it down. You also go back into break it down into small pieces. You also go back into, okay, why are we doing this? To remind them of their motivation, get them in touch with that. And another method that I do, wow, I just had it because it comes so naturally, but now I need to, I guess I need to formalize it. Oh my goodness. Totally slipped my mind. I'm not a senior yet, but I guess I'm having those moments already. Wow. Oh, I get them to look at everything they do as an experiment, because like everything that I do in my business is an experiment. I think this will work. This is a hypothesis. Now I'm going to go like test the hypothesis out. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to adjust, but I'm just going to measure what the results of this thing are. It also prevents me from getting caught up in hype. Like, oh, wow, I'm going to go do this thing and I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to get like 10,000 clients. Like, no, like ignore all the hype. You're not going to be the next Gary Vee or whatever. I'm just going to try this one thing and I'm going to see what I can measure out of that and how effective this thing is. And if it's working really well, then I'm going to like improve on it. If it's not working at all, maybe I'll figure out how I can improve on it, but my emotions aren't all wrapped up into it. So if it's not a failure, because actually a good test is don't do that. Like, okay, so I was successful. I found out one thing is definitely not going to work. I'm never going to try that one again. And another tool that I use is separating the what that I'm doing from the why. I would have to go through the whole thing, but that we only have one why. So I want to do this big goal in my life. This one what, you got a million whats. They'll come and go, they'll pass, they'll fail. Like, so it's okay. It doesn't mean I'm invalid or that my why or my main drive in life is wrong because this one thing didn't work. So I try to separate those things in their mind.
Yeah, absolutely. A good book that I usually recommend to clients is Failing Forward by John Maxwell, because they're afraid of failure. And what you said about it being an experiment, I've shared that concept before, but I usually tell people you do actually want to fail because failure is information. That's all that it is. Failure is information. So, if you think about, like you said, scientists, trial 1 didn't work, information. Trial 2 didn't work, information. Every trial is information about how to tweak and how to adjust. So yeah, absolutely.
Yep. We have a fail forward concept as well. So very good stuff. Before we go, because we're at the 1 hour mark. Before we go, I wanted you to tell your story. I wanted to ask about the trip from New York and going to Florida and the 2 suitcases and the baby and starting, from ground zero in your life. Like, what was that like for you? How did you deal with that? And I would suppose that is where you draw from a lot of that experience and then helping other people deal with the difficulty of starting their own business, probably not under that dire of a set of circumstances, I'm guessing.
Yeah, usually people do not start businesses while they are in the middle of a separation and divorce and a transition from one state to another. Usually people don't do that. But, sometimes when you have no choice. So what I will tell you is, when people think of their rock bottom, or they're afraid of failure, or they're afraid of their worst case scenario, I actually experienced all of the worst case scenarios in the same year at the same time.
Yes.
you know, Losing a marriage, moving, not having a job, no, like nothing was working. Like, the only thing that I could say is I had my health. And it wasn't a planned move, and obviously it wasn't a planned, like, I did not plan to end my marriage. That was not planned, but it was something that happened. And I said to myself, you know what? This is what I want for my life, and I'm not going to allow these circumstances to derail that. So I'm going to put together a plan, right? And I'm going to climb this mountain one step at a time. So I put together a plan. I moved from New York to Florida, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to figure out how can I make income while I'm here, because I wasn't licensed as a therapist in Florida yet. And then I discovered online therapy. I can do online therapy with my New York license. So that's what I started off doing. And then I started doing resumes for people online. I figured out how to do different income streams. Okay, so I started building one by one, little by little, building myself up until I got to the point where I said, okay, now I can relaunch myself in Florida and build my network in Florida. And that took me about, I would say, about 2 years to really do that, to climb that mountain and get to that point. So this is another reality that people need to know. It does not happen overnight. It takes time, it takes persistence, it takes perseverance, but you get there.
If someone came to you with infinite money and you were going to coach them on the absolute fastest track, how long would it take? Let's rewind. Let's go back to you when you first started, knowing what you know today, and money is not the option or the problem. How fast could you rebuild?
You can rebuild in 12 months.
So a one year. Okay, so now let's make money a problem. So I'm a Starbucks barista, or I'm driving an Uber, like whatever that I'm doing the thing that it takes to pay the bills, and I just don't have that extra income to pay a coach or whatever. How long is it going to take me?
You say they don't have money, so money is the issue.
Yeah.
I think it could still take 1 year to 2 years. But in that time, they'll have to be leveling up. Like, they can't stay the barista. To be like, okay, you're the barista, now let's get another job. Okay, another job. Let's keep building those jobs up until you make the money that you need to make so that you can hire someone. So that's the goal. The goal is not to stay at one level, it's to keep moving. And you can move every 3 months, every 6 months you can move. People don't think that you can, but you can. And it is a fast track. I know it because I did it.
Did you do that through private practice, or did you do that through other people's businesses, working for other people?
Online platforms.
Okay.
So there are online therapy subscription platforms that therapists can sign up for, and that's what I started out with before I went into private practice.
I got you. Okay. As I said, we were past an hour. I've seen people come in and out. I'm looking at it now, but there have been no additional comments. It made me wonder if maybe in the beginning I thought maybe the stream was broken, but it seems to be perfectly fine. So we just don't have any additional questions. Is there anything that you would want to talk about before we leave? I know the one thing we mentioned, we don't have to cover it. I don't know how pressed you are for time, but the interview instructions process, you said it was very detailed, and I kind of gave you some of the reason behind it, but I'm interested to know your feedback.
I think the interview process, the interview questions, they're important to have, because you definitely want to screen people. It could intimidate someone like I know you, you know, so we've spoken. But I think for someone, it could be intimidating. Like, oh my gosh, like, am I going to be prepared for this? Am I qualified? I don't know if I'm qualified. But, you know, that's just one of those things where, again, it's a mindset. If you think you're not qualified for something, then you probably won't be. So.
Very true. Very true. All right. Anything else you would want to talk about before we say good night?
I really just want people to know that whatever it is that they desire to have in their lifestyle or their business, it is possible. They just have to ask for help, right? They have to invest in help, invest in themselves by getting help. And they have to be very intentional about pursuing the things that they say they want.
Awesome. Last words. Thank you so much, Seneca Williams, for coming on. And I look forward. I'm sure you will be on again more times than this, and we'll continue to have these great conversations. Thank you, and good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.